I saw this article, and it's been a topic that we've had on the program for quite some time. The two-sport star. Where is that two-sport star gone? Feels like now we're more centralized in one sport. You get locked in as a kid on a traveling team, and then you stay with that traveling team in one sport because your parents probably feel like that's your best chance to get a college scholarship and or play in the pros. But Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, boy, that seems like a long time ago because it was a long time ago that you had these two sports stars. Tim Tebow is sort of on the fringe of that. John Elway, who joins us in a half hour, he was a legitimate two-sport star, drafted by the Yankees, but, of course, became a Hall of Fame quarterback. Robert Klemko from the Monday Morning Quarterback did a great article on this, and Robert joins us now. Why did you write this story now, Robert?
Well, we had actually a week of baseball-themed stories at the MMQB. As you know, Peter King, our boss, might like baseball more than he likes football. Whenever we do the training camp tour, we end up going to all these random AA minor league baseball games all over the country. And so he wanted to do a week of baseball-themed stories, and I got assigned this piece that I've always been interested in writing about the last of the great two-sport stars. You know, obviously Bo comes to mind, but it's really hard to surpass that 1992 season for Deion Sanders when he, played for the Falcons, was first-team All-Pro, and also played in the World Series, and he was kind of juggling between those two things late in the baseball season.
Is that more impressive than anything that Bo Jackson did as a two-sport star? What Deion did that season?
I think a lot of people see Bo as the greater athlete just because he was so much bigger and stronger and also had the speed and the agility. But, you go back and look at Bo's stats and 5 yards per carry, okay, awesome. About 800, 900 yards for 4 years. He never really reached superstardom in football like Deion did. And I don't know that he had a season as productive in baseball while he was playing football as Deion did in 1992 and probably 1993 and 4 as well.
Do you consider Tebow a two-sport star?
Well, he's a failed football player, right?
Kind of. I mean, one of the great college players of all time. So I don't.
Right, one of the great.
Yeah. So I don't know how you would, kind of parse that, dice that up, and say, he's a two-sport athlete. That doesn't make him a two-sport star.
Well, yeah. When I think two-sport star, I think somebody that has the ability and the endurance to juggle both within the same calendar year, or even in Deion's case, at the same time. I mean, I don't think Tebow played any baseball in high school, much less college, because he was focused on football. So it's like baseball was a last resort, whereas these guys were good enough, and the people managing these teams that they played for had to concede that they were so talented as athletes and had so much endurance physically and mentally that they had to allow them to play for, two different leagues. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of guys with the ability, but they're not superstars in either sport. So a manager in baseball or a head coach in football is not going to have to back down and say, well, you can do both. Usually it's one or the other for almost, 99.99% of the population.
And it feels like it'd be hard for management to say, because an athlete's going to be selfish to say, hey, I'm going to try to do both, and it's not going to be beneficial to either one of those teams because you're not full-time, fully invested. But is this done, the two-sport athlete, the two-sport star?
Yeah. So I was talking to Jerry Glanville about this, and he lives down in Knoxville now. And, I mean, he's just a hilarious guy. Talked to him for about a half hour. But I was saying, did it affect anything that you were doing on defense schematically to not have Deion in practice for basically all of training camp and all of the first month of the season? And he said, I used to put Deion in cat coverage. You know what that is? And I said, no, I never heard of that. He said, I told Deion, you see that cat over there? You got him all day. And what he was basically saying was that Deion was so good that they either had him in bump and run man against the best receiver, or they would play, zone cover 3 and rotate all the zones away from him. They didn't need to help him in any way in coverages. So they could actually just stick him out on an island and say, do what you do. I think there are very few coaches willing to do that now with the elite cornerback talents. Even guys like Josh Norman, who's getting paid the most money among cornerbacks. I believe Trumaine Johnson actually might be number one, but Josh is getting like $15 million a year. I mean, nobody's putting Josh Norman on an island for an entire game and just letting him play bump and run man on somebody. Like, he's not that kind of player. So I think that schematically the game on the football side has gotten way more complicated, and it's very hard to put a player out there at any position without him being there and being integrated in that offensive or defensive unit for, several months at a time. So to think that somebody could then moonlight in baseball, which is basically an everyday sport when they're in season, and really get into the groove of hitting, because I think a lot of guys like Deion would say that you need a lot of time working on that every day to get back into the swing of it. I think it's basically impossible. It would have to be somebody who had very few responsibilities, specifically on the defensive side of the ball.
Good stuff, Robert. Always fun to talk about that. The MMQB.com, the article on the two-sport star with Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson. Good to catch up with you again, Robert. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.